So welcome to Storytime 75. Um, Today, our kind of costume and show and tell themes included astronomy and space, hence my starry night and my little attempt at like moon phases. And wonderful sort of spacey background on mum and dad, and we've got Earth in the form of the globe. Beautiful. Um, and strange things that you may have had to carry on the train or public transport. So the gym ball is here as partly, I think it looks a little bit like I've got a planet next to me, so that's kind of cool. But also, this would be a really inconvenient thing to try and take on public transport. And I know Mum has stories of trying to take one to and from a class. And this here is Doug. Doug gets to come today just because they're one of the train top related topics, because there are a few under kind of each heading, was bunnies on trains.
Yes.
So I'm going to pretend he's been on a train with me, but also it's a rare opportunity for him to come downstairs because there are no real bunnies in the room today. We're
Are
going
they
to collect them
terrified?
from their professional make friends place. And
Hmm.
hopefully they're going to still like each other when we bring them home. Doug, you going to stay upright? Good. Well done. Good not falling over. Were there any other weird things to take on the train amongst our listeners?
Well, Janie has taken a bus. On the bus, Janie has taken Muttley, the hairy terrier, in a picnic basket or big bag. It's our bus journey from Adelaide to Whyalla.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Was
because
Muttley well behaved? Did Muttley get discovered or?
no, Muttley did not get discovered. Janie got up to Whyalla and messaged our mother, Operation Muttley, unqualified success. Because she wasn't turfed off the bus or anything else. But my a good one I've done, I mean, it's probably reasonably normal for people that work in the area, but one time we'd been into Adelaide and we had agreed to help a friend move, and part of that involved cleaning up her apartment.
Yeah.
So I had, I mean, I think I dressed quite nicely for going into the city. But then I had all this cleaning equipment in a bag and
Yeah.
like scourers and stuff. And I didn't buy them new for the occasion, so it's pretty scungy. I don't know what people thought I was on about, but yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
Yes. I don't think I've been on the train with anything too strange. Or I've been on the tram with a series of IKEA flat packs and
Yes.
stuff because IKEA has a tram stop. So we went to IKEA on the tram and then brought back our stuff that we bought on the tram. In
Mm.
Southampton, when we first moved, we went and got IKEA was walking distance from our flat. Um, so we got like some really big stuff delivered, and then we went home with like the carpet and
Yeah.
but that was on foot, so we didn't try and squeeze into any
We
train
saw someone in
buses.
Sheffield carrying her mattress, didn't we?
Yeah, she
Yeah,
didn't have a car.
She didn't have a car, so she was stunning.
and a mattress on her back. Oh,
Yeah,
heavy, hard work.
yeah.
So other general topics we had sort of related to the astronomy theme. Constellations are both kind of official ones and past ones that have been phased out, and related to that, things that got sort of unrecognized or made not official anymore in the way of Pluto. And there are some constellations that fall into that category. I also popped in here as I was writing. I found that a lot of these topics lent themselves to lots of interesting facts and did you knows, when we have a good character for that, but that it sort of needed a bit more in there to get a bit of a plot going. So I added when people get your field of expertise confused with something else, because of course, astronomy and astrology with the potential to be mixed up, sounding relatively similar and having to do with stars. Then we had related to trains, railway timetables, and complex platforms, and so forth. Bunnies on trains, and trying to transport odd shaped or awkward objects on public transport, and weird train lore. So just, yeah, interesting train informational stories. The opposite of something getting unrecognized or made unofficial, so things that have been kind of inexplicably preserved or not updated. The example was the use of the word alight, which we only seem to use in that context of getting on and off the train mostly. Nachos, talking back to robots, computers, or inanimate objects. And I've added in street performers because this sort of occurred to me when I was doing the stuff about trains. Now, before I get into my poem, I want to just talk quickly about how I'm going to manage the next few months of Storytime. I don't want to stop Storytime because it's a lovely part of the month, but it's probably going to get fairly difficult. Since you may or may not kind of notice me not fitting into things. Small Human is due in mid-July. So next month will be kind of the start of be ready just in case time. And then the July story basically is going to fall almost on his due date. So we're just going to have to play that date by year. But it's my plan to kind of carry on doing something. The hardest sort of aspect of Storytime, I would say, is usually kind of endings and binding everything together into that kind of cohesive whole. And that's the thing that often has me up to the last minute doing bits for it. But we have a lot of favorite characters and kind of interesting themes and ideas and stuff. So I thought what I could do for a few months whilst Tiny Human is around and it's all a bit more difficult is something a little bit like what we've done for our birthday celebrations, where a lot of you have written little bits in characters in particular situations. So the idea would be that rather than request me to fit a whole list of topics into one story, to request particular characters that you want to see and some situations you'd like to see them in. And then I'll do little bits, little scenarios of them dealing with those situations. And we could also have kind of a key theme for the day that all of the stuff that happens relates to. So all the situations kind of hang together. It does occur to me that next month will be the closest we've got probably to a solstice.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want to take that away as a thing that we do. So we should definitely still do wishes and things. And maybe one of the little scenarios could be kind of like the wishing scene or something from the solstice and those characters we usually see at the solstice. And I'm very happy to still do poems as well. So you could sort of request what you'd like the poem to be about, and I can do that as well. So at the end of today's story, what we'll do, it can be a bit varied, so we can try a few things, but I think next month I just want to kind of trial it and see if that we can have something similar length, similar amounts of fun, but a little bit easier for me to get done. So we'll decide whether we want to have all kind of vote for which character we'd like it and a series of situations for that character, or whether we want to see a series of different nominated people, maybe in kind of a common themed sort of situation or something like that. But we can decide what way we want to go for next month when we get to the end of today. So today's poem is called Lines of Light, and it relates to space and constellations and the things being sort of recognized or not. Out in the wide, black beyond, so few things are certainties. So much might be missed with our probes and our lenses. And yet, for generations gone, we've drawn lines and connections, building boxes round the great unknowns like this might tame them. Shapes formed by pricks of light turned into grand predictions, navigating by the suns of other worlds and labeling what's seen there. And once we have the outlines, we can count things in or out. Human minds demoting planets on the basis of what else is floating around, and setting councils who get to say, these are the constellations, and draw those maps onto the sky like outlines. All the other earthlings' colours have to stay in. But you might say things have a name out there among the stars. Really, we're just building thoughts on lines of light shone from afar. Okay, so today's story is called Similar Opposites. Did you know that the spacing of the Undercroft in London St Pancras Station was measured in beer barrels? Arjun asked, watching as Annae extracted a tortilla chip from her container of nachos and dipped it into just the cheese layer of the topping. No, replied Annae, around the mouthful. I live in Australia. So, Arjun scooped up some nacho filling with his fork, carefully selecting some of each of the component parts that made nachos great in order to ensure the maximum enjoyment of the mouthful. So I tend not to know random facts about British train stations, Annae answered. I don't understand why you don't think it's impractical to use space in your brain for that. You use space in your brain to remember horoscopes and celebrities' lip gloss brands, Arjun retorted. At least I might actually be going to London. Annae flicked a crumb in his direction and watched as Arjun methodically tried to work out where it had gone. But aren't horoscopes part of the thing you're maybe going to the convention for? Arjun located the crumb in the folds of a spare napkin next to his bowl and shook it carefully into the path of a sparrow that was hopping around the outdoor tables. He groaned. No, astrology is not the same thing as astronomy. I have to get to this convention. I know there'll be loads of people there who think more like me. It'll be awesome. He fixed his friend with a stern look. And you better not embarrass me by talking about star signs. You're assuming I'm coming. Annae gave him a challenging raised eyebrow over another cheese-dunked tortilla chip. Yes, I need you. I've heard people in England have quite different social norms in some ways. Dad said sometimes they say something very polite and really it means they hate you. I won't be able to tell, so I need you to tell me so I can hate them very politely back. Annae snorted and nearly inhaled her ginger beer. Your dad's point might be that even I won't be able to tell, she said. But I can try. And you can do all the currency conversion maths for me and tell me so I don't think it's dollars and spend way too much. We're that thing, the biology one, when the two species are good together. Arjun put down his fork and closed his eyes. We're not symbiotic. Most of the time, we just make each other cross and devise silly competitions. Not to mention that, as unlikely as it may sometimes seem, we are the same species. Replied Annae. Maybe we're more of an opposites attracting thing. That would make sense because I'm a Taurus and you're... No. Arjun groaned. Every part of that is a myth. Opposites don't attract. Similarity does. And you know what I think about star signs. I think I've made up my mind. I definitely want to go to England, see the Dryad meteor shower with other people who care about it, and go meet other people who know about science. Fine. Annae stabbed at her nachos somewhat crossly. I may or may not go with you, since we're clearly not similar enough to be good friends. Annae somehow got over her annoyance by the time Arjun was booking the trip. It was a bit of a sore point for her that her grandma had seen more of the world than she had in the recent past. So Arjun had to be forgiven, even if he might pretend not to be with her around the science people. First, though, came the challenge of preparing for an overseas travel, something which neither Annae nor Arjun had a lot of experience with. They went on a special shopping trip together for travel adapters, for electronics, and aeroplane permitted size toiletries. Arjun also recommended sweets that were suckable and said that changing air pressure might hurt their ears on the plane, so Annae bought some very expensive earplugs. At the self-serve checkout, many of these items were too light for the scales, and the electronic voice kept saying, "Please place your item in the bagging area," and waiting impatiently for additional non-existent weight, repeating the instruction incessantly until a member of staff came to assist them. "It's there, you stupid machine," Annae snapped when this happened for the 5th time. The attendant kept wandering off, despite everyone else appearing to do much better with their checkouts and not seeming to particularly need their assistance. "It's not its fault," Arjun objected quietly, giving the automatic checkout a little pat. "It's only been given a scale with limited sensitivity. Shouting at it is like shouting at someone who's colorblind for not sorting your shirts into rainbow order." The way he said it made Annae wonder if this was, in fact, something Arjun had made the mistake of doing.
Oh,
Well, why don't they choose scales sensitive enough for the lightest thing the shop sells? Annae asked. "That," replied Arjun, "is a reasonable question. Realistically, they need scales that can measure a few standard deviations below the lowest weight and above the highest." The staff member approached, sighed at them, as though there was a secret rule against buying light things, and it was their fault that the checkout wouldn't accept them, and then swiped an ID card on the scanner as though it was a weapon. Annae tossed the packet of small packets of tissues into the bagging area, and the staff member walked away. "Unexpected item in bagging area," said the checkout. "Oh, come on," exclaimed Annae. "This was too light for you to notice before." Arjun sighed, gave the self-serve checkout an apologetic look into the security camera, and removed the tissues to the safety of a waiting reusable bag he was holding to avoid calling the member of staff back again. Thankfully, the last few items scanned and weighed in on the bagging scales without any issues, and the checkout cheerfully accepted their payment and told them to enjoy their day. Then it said, "Please take your items." "All right," Annae told it, "we will. You don't need to rush us out after slowing us down on every single item. Thanks." Arjun hurried to remove the little hand sanitizers and toothpastes and lip balms, but they'd gathered quite a pile by the time they grabbed those couple of other things that one turns out to need during any small shop. "Please take your items," the checkout repeated. "Whoever programmed you was setting you up to be hated," Arjun told it. "They really ought to have let you stop saying that as soon as the first item is removed. Clearly, I'm in the process of taking my items, and telling me again to do so is very unlikely to make me go any faster, and extremely likely to cause irritation. I don't really get humans, but I still know that." At this point, only their lip balms, which had previously been deemed to be weightless, remained to be packed into the carry bags. "Please take your items," said the checkout, sounding, Annae thought, almost threatening in its tone. "So now you think those weigh something?" she exploded, scooping them up. "Okay," Arjun admitted, "that is definitely a serious fault. Maybe I can offer to help calibrate them." "Arjun, no," Annae towed him towards the exit. "As infuriating as they are, we are preparing to go on an overseas trip. We do not have time to set up self-development programs for self-serve checkout robots." Since neither Arjun nor Annae drove, getting to the airport with all their luggage was a business for which help would normally be sought from friends and family members. Arjun, however, had other ideas. I want to get used to what it will be like being on the plane, he said. So I think we should use public transport for as much of the journey as we can, so I can practice being squashed and people being noisy and having lots of stuff to remember to take on and off when boarding and disembarking. Annae gave him a very Annae raised eyebrow. You do know that the bit on the plane is already around 24 hours? Are you sure you want to add more being squashed and annoying other people time to that? Arjun, however, was not to be discouraged. So, far earlier than they would have needed to leave to go in someone's car or a taxi, Annae and Arjun dragged their suitcases and carry-on luggage along the train platform, complete with Arjun's travel telescope in a special carry case that made him look like he was up to some sort of no good. Arjun, you're going to the Royal Observatory, Annae pointed out. I'm pretty sure there will be telescopes there already. Yes, said Arjun, in a tone that left Annae in no doubt about how dense she was being. But lots of people will be using them. No one will be using mine. Anyway, I don't want anyone thinking I'm an amateur. Replied Annae as they boarded the train. Bringing your quite small travel telescope won't give that impression at all. Her sarcasm was lost on Arjun, who pointed down at the tracks as they hauled their suitcases aboard. Did you know that the width of the rails in England and America is actually still the measurement between two Roman horses' bottoms? The standard measurement was used for paved bits for chariot wheels on roads, but when they set up railways, they just stuck to it. And they helped shove their luggage into the rack and sat down with a smile. That's kind of cool. So Roman history is built into the train tracks. Yup. Arjun went to get out his headphones. Unfortunately for Arjun, carrying an intriguing shaped case on the train is a good way to ensure other people take an interest in you. And no sooner had he sat down than a child was leaning over the back of the seat in front, pointing at the telescope case. What's in there? Inquisitive eyes examined him and Annae with what Arjun hoped was the spark of interest in the world that denoted a future scientist. A telescope, he told the child, for looking at the stars or anything that's a long way away. The child got a small frown. Why? Questioning is good, Arjun reminded himself. Because the stars are interesting for me. I'm going to do a convention for people who are interested in space and stars and the moon and things like that. An adult sitting with the child twisted around in their seat too. Like constellations and horoscopes, Matthew. No, Annae corrected them hurriedly, having by now had the lecture on this numerous times. Not horoscopes. That's a... She was saved the explanation by the carriage doors opening and someone carrying a carry crate full of rabbits, taking over the mantle of most interesting passenger. The rabbits looked out of their mesh window at Arjun, noses sniffing, and he wished he understood as much rabbit body language as he did cat. Then someone got on with a huge pole that looked like it might be meant for banister railings or similar, if the person carrying it weren't entirely painted gold and white, and even the bunnies stopped drawing attention. The newcomer struggled for a while with how to fit the pole into the carriage, then sat down and went completely still. A street performer who did pretending to be a statue, Arjun realized. What the pole was for was unclear. A few people tried to ask, but the performer obviously thought they should get the most out of their journey as part of the performance and didn't move a muscle except when someone came by to check tickets. A few people put coins in the performer's apparently discarded hat, which Arjun thought was pretty unfair. They were literally earning by doing nothing. Annae was suitably impressed and gave the statue person a $5 note. 2 bus rides and a small shuttle trip later, Annae and Arjun finally checked in their bags and joined a long, winding queue for the security check. It's funny how people can't queue in a straight line, Annae commented. Even with barriers, the queue still wends around all over the place. Did you know that the word wend is what's known as a fossil word? Arjun asked. Annae frowned and shook her head. Wend once just meant to go, Arjun explained, but it's almost been dropped from the dictionary before, since no one really uses it anymore. We only use it in specific phrases like wending around, but those phrases have had the effect of preserving the word. As a result, it stuck around while other older words get lost. He considered. The verb to alight, like it gets used on trains, is probably another example, except that it's basically been saved by the trains and their announcements. That's kind of cool, Annae admitted. Aren't there some words that have been deleted from the dictionary, though? Arjun nodded. Yes, my favourite that was taken out recently from print editions is frutescent. Annae tilted her head from side to side, trying to decide if she'd heard the word somewhere or not. What does it mean? To be shrub-like, Arjun replied. Said Annae. I think I can see why no one bothered to fight for that one to stay in. I guess it's sort of sad, though, when something that used to be recognised gets made unofficial again, like Pluto. Pluto got reclassified, not unrecognised, Arjun corrected her. But there are constellations that got removed from the official list by the International Astronomical Union, but used to be recognised and used for navigation and everything. Annae tipped her head on one side, curious. Do you know how to recognise any? Could you show me when we're at the observatory? Arjun considered. Yes, but only if you promise not to embarrass me by talking about astrology in front of my high similarity potential astronomy friends. Deal, Annae told him. When they arrived in the UK, the fascination Arjun had with London St Pancras Station was rather put to the test. Arjun, Annae complained, as they ran along a stretch of what looked like shopping mall to reach the lifts that would take them to the actual platforms. It would really be much more useful if you knew how to make sure we went up in the correct lift to get on the platform we need to be on. The main station at St Pancras is raised above ground level because when it was built, railways legally couldn't cross the old Southern Ring Road, Arjun informed her. Coming in from the other direction, a canal was in the way, so they just built a viaduct over the canal and the whole station higher to match. Annae looked about the platform they'd emerged on and groaned. That's very interesting, Arjun, but I have a bad feeling we're supposed to be over there. She pointed across to another platform, visible over the vast expanse of the station. There did not appear to be a way to walk there without going back downstairs and up in a different lift. As they made their way further across the mall below, stopping to peer at the board covered in timetables, which kept scrolling up just as they found the journey they wanted, Annae and Arjun found themselves being serenaded. The one-person band featured a ukulele, a melodica, a small drum around the player's neck, an egg-shaped shaker on a lanyard, and a mouth organ. Unlike some one-person bands Annae had previously encountered and been rather impressed by, this individual had clearly not thought through the practicalities of reaching and playing their various instruments as a member of a species with only 2 arms and 1 set of lungs. They were singing Riptide by Vance Joy, which it seemed to Annae could have been undertaken with the ukulele alone, but kept trying to have musical interludes where they played melody on the melodica or mouth organ. Every time they did this, the performer tried to keep time, but could not find the mouthpiece for the melodica and had to stop strumming the ukulele to reach for it, creating an awkward pause, followed by a section of melody, then a further awkward pause while the musician pulled the ukulele back into position and started strumming again. On the whole, the effect was very distracting. Annae squinted at the scrolling train timetable and gritted her teeth. "Stay still, damn it," she exclaimed. The one-person band twisted toward her in alarm. "Not you," she reassured them as they flailed around for the air tube for the melodica again. "I was talking to the departures board." "Not its fault," Arjun muttered. Finally, Arjun, Annae, and their luggage got onto the correct platform and the correct train. They were not unusual in having lots of luggage with them here. Next to them, on the other side of the aisle, was someone who was taking home a microwave. The power cord wound up around the fingers of one hand. In front was the one-person band heading home for the day, their various instruments in a sort of sling they wore like a backpack. And behind them was another street performer of the kind who pretends to be a statue. This one bronze, and sitting beside somebody with a large collection of objects for juggling in a mesh bag. The statue person was so perfectly still during the journey that Annae was beginning to wonder whether they actually were some sort of public art installation. But the bronze statue got up when they reached their stop, exited the train straight into the Costa queue, and could be heard ordering a tomato and cheese panini. At the convention, there were, as Arjun had suggested, a lot of people with their own telescopes. Some were obviously local or rich and had been able to transport much larger and fancier pieces of equipment than Arjun's. A few gave his little travel telescope incredulous looks, which made Annae feel rather defensive, but Arjun didn't seem to notice. He excitedly talked about the meteor shower and space and things that might be out there to anyone who would listen. Since Annae managed to keep her word and had not uttered a single sentence about horoscopes, star signs, or the effect of celestial objects on her love life or fortunes, once it got dark, Arjun set up his telescope and kept his word in return. "This one's made up of what are now considered 3 smaller constellations," he told her. "But originally, these stars were known as the Argo Navis, the ship of the Argonauts. People decided that Argo Navis was so big that it wasn't useful. So in 1930, when they made the list of modern constellations, it got broken up." Annae was surprised to find that she could make out the rough shape of a ship in the night sky when Arjun pointed out the stars that outlined it. "Another constellation that we don't recognize anymore is Artinous," Arjun went on. "This one doesn't really look much like what it's supposed to be, in my opinion, which is maybe why it didn't make the list. Artinous was the lover of the Roman Emperor Hadrian. When he died, Hadrian had him immortalized as a constellation. I guess it worked for quite a long time because people still recognized Artinous until the constellations were formally listed, and this one didn't make it. Bit more effective than a fancy stone tomb or something." Annae agreed that this one was a bit hard to discern, but she liked the story and looking up at the stars with Arjun. "Why are you looking at obsolete constellations?" asked somebody near them, in a tone that implied this was personally offensive to them. Arjun shrugged. "Because it's history." "Has nothing to do with the actual science, though," the other astronomy person replied. "No, but it is interesting to know what people used to think and how ideas have moved on," Arjun said. "All science builds on old ideas that have been proven or disproven or are still being investigated after all. And so much of the universe is still too far away to actually investigate properly. We're probably wrong about how a lot of things work out there." "Humph," answered the other person, turning back to their superior-looking telescope. When the meteor shower started, While Annae watched in delight, the people around them started making all sorts of notes and remarking things to one another that sounded mathematical and a little cold to Annae. For a while, Arjun joined in, and Annae smiled at him enjoying the science. But presently he went quiet and just watched, setting his notebook aside. It's beautiful, Annae ventured, flopping back on the grass to look up better. Yes, Arjun murmured. It is. Later, back at their accommodation, Arjun and Annae flicked through some pictures Arjun had taken. Did you manage to make any cool science friends today? Annae asked. Or was I too embarrassing? Arjun frowned. I don't know. I thought a lot of the people there would be similar to me, but some of them weren't very nice. I don't think I really liked them as much as I expected. And they got up and retrieved their nachos from the microwave, picking a tortilla chip out of hers to dip in the cheese. Perhaps you're too similar. There's no such thing as too similar to be friends, Arjun replied, frowning. And they considered. Well, maybe you're not similar in some ways that are important. Like, some of those people didn't really see the meteor shower. You did. Even though you're interested in the science, that doesn't stop you appreciating how amazing it is just to look at it too. I think for some of them it does. Mm-hmm. She put down the nachos and sat on the floor. And we're practically opposites in lots of ways, but the evidence of us currently being on a trip together suggests we are in fact friends. Arjun poked at his food. Annae had got the thicknesses of the nacho layers slightly wrong, but she'd also used evidence in her argument. So you're saying that we're similar in the ways that really count, that some things are more important to match than others, and so my maths is wrong. Yeah, said Annae, crossing her legs and holding her bowl in her lap in a way guaranteed to make crumbs. We're similar opposites. Arjun regarded her over his food, wondering why the oxymoron didn't make him cringe. He ought to correct that. It was a silly, wrong thing to say. Yes, he said instead, giving an unexpected smile. We are.
That was gorgeous. Really lovely. I like the statue getting off the train and ordering the panini. Was it? Very beautiful. No, that was great. Lovely. Quite touching. I can't quite pick what ages they would be there.
Yeah, it's young adults, old enough to
young adults, yeah.
Travel on their own, but
yeah, very nice. Loved it.
Okay. So yeah. For June.
You're for June.
Do we want to select a particular character with those who are sort of familiar with lots, or I thought that we would like to sort of see something a little bit ongoing? We do want probably solstice people.
I think we need the solstice people, yeah. Yeah, I think we need this.
The next time it might need to be Albie and Co, because it is our closest to solstice one.
Yeah, let's have Albie and Co, and maybe we can all try our closest approximation of a onesie.
Yes, actually, I was going to say that about doing these ones, and in terms of like dressing up and stuff, that it would be fun to all be the relevant character.
Yeah,
so we're all the same person. Yeah. It's supposed to be the same person.
That'd be fun.
Is Greece in with that lot?
No, Greece is older than that lot. They do know Greece.
I do know Greece. They've met Greece.
They've met Greece, but the characters, Albie's friends, knew Greece when they were little kids. So it's probably not around them as adults.
I think is Cassie, who liked lots of animals, is linked in, isn't she?
Cassie and Jen are both vets, and
they're with that. Abby.
They're both pretty keen on most kinds of animals. Cassie has Crackers, the galah.
Yeah.
Right.
Who had the spanner, the guide dog failure?
That's character called Jamie. We haven't seen him a lot of times. He knows sort of Casey and Jay and those people.
But with the solstice thing, that gives you lots of freedom because at various times different people have dropped in and out of the solstice.
We've had visitors to the solstice, and we've had a lot of like new partners coming in or friends being included. They also know like Fraser and Betty and that through Alina. And that connects to like Bryn and Ella and all of this. So basically anybody could be involved in a solstice. I also recall that those characters have an agreement about